fan of hers. And so anyway, I just thought you probably knew her. You probably traveled in the same circles. Looking forward to today's call.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for being on. Good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock, right on the button. And thanks for joining me today. And Coach Amy Cohen is on to manage the chat box today. We are actually going to be doing some work together today. I am talking about obviously leading with grace through a crisis, and this is part 6. And these are top 3 qualities of an ideal team player. And what's great and not great about now is I am able to put together some themes and topics that are showing up every single day with my clients and the executive teams and organizations that I'm working with in real time. So these aren't things that have sat on the shelf or I'm finding in a book or thinking very long about what topic I'm actually going to talk about today, but these are real-time issues and challenges that people are dealing with, like today, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And if you're joining us now, just type in where you're joining me from. Make sure that you guys are muting your microphones. If you don't, I'm going to make you do some push-ups and some burpees this morning. So I get to talk about one of my most favorite topics is teams. I've coached teams for many, many years, almost 3 decades. And now I have the privilege of working with many teams now that are executive. I'm actually working with sports teams now that are going through this crisis. Not necessarily basketball teams, but I'm working with head coaches and their staffs on getting through times of uncertainty. I just started doing this a couple weeks ago. I decided to go across back to the dark side of athletics. They're my people, and helping sometimes first-time head coaches or coaches that have been in the business for a very long time that haven't faced crises like this on how to manage their programs, how to manage their staff, how to manage their players, how to continue staying focused through this time as well. So that's something that I'm actually involved in right now. And this is something that I'm actually working on with many, many teams, is the top 3 qualities of an ideal team player. And we're going to talk a little bit about this today on the importance, but they're just really 3, simple, I want to say simple, very carefully. They're simple concepts, but they're very difficult for individuals. And these are keys to that it's a unique combination of all 3 qualities that makes a person an ideal team player. And, unfortunately, even during the best of times, when one of these characteristics or even 2 of these characteristics are missing during, I want to say, normal times, we have dysfunction. And now we're in a period of uncertainty, anxiety, stress, and it just puts a lot more on how to be an ideal team player during times like this, which is lacking in a significant way. And how do we be a great team player where I'm not around my team, but virtually as well, and challenges can arise. So the first one I really want to cover today is being that ideal team player is being humble. And there's so many things around being humble as a leader and being that ideal team player. Is I talk about all the time is getting the right people on the bus. And I'm working with a number of leaders that maybe have gone and hired the wrong people, or they have the wrong teammates on their team. And the first part of this is getting the right people on your team. And I was talking with a client yesterday, and they were going through a hiring process, and they're looking to hire new people on their staff or new people on their teams. And it's not necessarily getting the most talented individual on your team. Everybody wants to go out and get the most talented. We want to make sure we get the right person and the right fit for our organization, the right fit for your approach, the right fit for your style. And you want to make sure that you have the right individual that have the right qualities that actually can fit within the culture, that can fit within your expectations. And if not, just think of all the issues that you could have. And those are the people who have an accurate self-awareness about themselves. People who are confident. They've gone out and they've gotten style. They've hired for style instead of maybe necessarily hiring for, I got the most talented individual, but sometimes the talent doesn't fit within the culture. And we hear that quote all the time, is that, culture, trumps talent every single day. And humility allows us to become better leaders, and to really better leaders and better teammates, to build those types of teams that really make a difference, that do something magical. And there's, when we root for teammates, and people watch a lot of sports, and we're not watching a lot of sports on television right now, but when you watch sports and you see the broadcaster that's interviewing the quarterback or the point guard or the coach or whoever they're interviewing, I would say 9 times out of 10, who are they giving the credit to? Well, you had such a great game. Your stats are unbelievable this game. Well, I couldn't have done it without my teammates. I could not have done this without my position coach. I could not have done this without the fans in the stands. And when people are giving credit to other people, that's when we have that humble individual that is that ideal teammate. When it becomes about me, myself, and I'm the one that did this, and I'm the one that needs to get the credit, and I want to make sure I get the credit publicly, that's when we get into problems as far as those team players, is practicing that humility and being that humble teammate. Great teammates lack the excessive ego. And we hear all the time is, check the ego at the door. Sometimes we need to have that ego show up around the table, but it's to check the ego at the door because we are actually on a team. And or the concern about your status, like, well, I'm a senior vice president, you should listen to me, or I'm in that chair, or I'm the head coach, or I am, the owner of this project. And sometimes we've got to check our ego at the door. And as a coach, I would always tell my clients, because people love sports analogies around, being humble, is I say, okay, as a coach, who gets the credit for the wins? Who gets the credit for the clients? Who gets the credit for having an unbelievable presentation that you might have done? And I would say, my players always got the credit for the wins. And the people around me, if I put on a great presentation or whatever, it's everybody that are around me that helped put that together. But your players get the credit for the wins. Your teammates get the credit for the numbers that you get. And who gets the credit for the losses? The head coach. Everything that goes wrong is being able to take responsibility for that. And so, one of being an ideal teammate is being extremely humble. They're quick to point out contributions from the team, and really slow to seek the attention for themselves. It's not me, I, this is what I did, this is how I do things, but it's adding that we and they and us into our conversation, which is very, very important. Is those humble individuals share the credit, they give the credit, they share the credit, they emphasize their team and not themselves, and they define success as collectively and not me. And when I was a younger coach, when I was in my mid-30s or even younger than that, you walk around and you're like, well, this is what I've done. This is why our team is successful, is because, I am such a great coach. And so the older and wiser that you get, it's not about you as a leader. It's about your team. It's about elevating your team and being humble and giving them the credit. And here's the last thing I'll say about being humble before we take a little quiz, is speak less and listen more. And this is hard for people. I think leaders figure this out later in their leadership positions, later in their life, when we all get older and wiser and more experience, and we've been around the block a few times. And I had learned to run my staff meetings and team meetings by speaking less and listening more. And I would never run my staff meetings in my, I would say, the last 5 to 7 years of my coaching career. And now I'm coaching my executives that you don't have to run your staff meeting. You don't have to run and be the one that is speaking all the time. And I could do a whole session just on this, is learning to allow other people to speak. 90% of your meeting should be other people speaking, giving ideas, giving perspective, running the meeting. And where you can sit back and listen more and watch people's body language and watch the collaboration that's going on. And that's being a confident and humble leader. And so as leaders, this really gave me a lot of freedom as a leader. It also, exemplifies and puts an exclamation point on confidence as a leader. And being humble and giving other people credit really develops that independence inside, that self-confidence. It really gives leaders the freedom to become the leaders that we've always wanted to be. And, really setting your team up for success and freeing yourself as a leader. It is transformational to get to this point, but having those humble teammates are ideal team players. So here's a little quiz I want everybody to take. First, do I have any questions or any comments about an ideal teammate is having humble teammates around you, and as a leader and as a coach is being able to develop that skill set on your team. Should be an expectation. Do you think those 17 to 22-year-old kids that you are listening to on television came in with that skill set? Absolutely not. Those individuals were taught that skill on how to give on in front of millions of people on television. They did not come in with that skill set whatsoever. They were taught that skill set to give credit to their teammates, to give credit to their coaches. And this is why. This is how you will be perceived, and this is how you will be looked at. So that is taught to 17 to 23-year-olds that you see that are being behind press tables, that are being interviewed. And as leaders, we need to teach our team that and expect that of our teammates, especially on how we feel and how we're communicating. So before I give you a little 6-question quiz on here that you guys will have to get a piece of paper and a pencil down. Here, do I have any questions before we get into this or any comments? Coach Amy Cohen, do we have anything or should we just keep rolling?
We can keep going on to the quiz.
Okay. So this is around being humble. And I want you to, again, I want you as leaders, we think about ourselves being humble, but then as leaders, we need to get out of ourselves and we need to look at our teams. I just gave a team a quiz, this quiz the other day, and I'm starting to get some of their assessments back. And some people are doing really well and other people have a lot of work to do. And these individuals are not 17 to 23-year-olds, but they're being very self-aware and very honest with themselves. So here on a rating scale of 1 to 3, 1 being rarely, 2 being sometimes, and 3 being usually, okay? So if we can make sure that we are muting our mics as well. The first question is, and score yourselves, is I compliment or praise my teammates without hesitation. Again, 1 is rarely, 2 is sometimes, and 3 is usually. I compliment or praise them without hesitation. The second one, I easily admit to my mistakes. 1 is rarely, 2 is sometimes, 3 is usually. Again, I want us to think about us and how we are as a teammate. And then for those of you that have teams, I want you to take some of these and you can actually work on these with your team as well. Third one is I'm willing to take on a lower level role for the good of the team. So this is getting out of your job description, or that's too low for me to do. That would be like for me as a former coach to go sweep the floor before practice. So I would always believe I would be the first one out there sweeping the floor, and I would also be the coach that's calling the timeouts and running the huddles in the game. So that's being a humble teammate that you're actually helping. If it's not, that's not my role. I've heard that many times. Again, 1 is rarely, 2 is sometimes, 3 is usually. The fourth question is, I gladly share credit for team accomplishments. I gladly share credit for team accomplishments. 1 is rarely, 2 is sometimes, 3 is usually. The fifth one is, I readily acknowledge my weaknesses. I readily acknowledge my weaknesses. 1 is rarely, 2 is sometimes, 3 is usually.
I've yet to receive my student. I have filled.
Okay, someone's talking with their, so you got, whoever's talking owes me 10 burpees right now. Just kidding. Some of you'd be glad to do them, get some exercise in. The last question is, I offer and accept apologies graciously. So 1 is rarely, 2 is sometimes, 3 is usually. So I want you to, now that 6 questions, I want you to add up your score. Get a calculator out if you need it. And everybody's got a score. All right. So I've got to get my little scoring sheet out here. So if you scored, I think it's 18 or above, I've got to get the rules, the scoring chart out here. So a score of 18 or 17, okay, is an indication that this quality is a potential strength for you, that you are humble, you're a humble teammate. If your total score is 16 to 14, this quality, you might need some work. You need some work to do in this area, some self-awareness, developing this skill set, really being aware of, I need some work to do in this area to become that ideal team player. Okay, and this isn't just the teams that you manage, but this is on your senior leadership team and above as well. A total score of 13 or lower is an indication that you need improvement around this quality to be an ideal team player. Okay, so where did some of you fall? And I know we're being humble, we're being vulnerable here, but I want you to type some of your scores into the chat box. And then I would like 2 people to share your experience thinking about some of these questions and really kind of where you are at today, and some things that you feel like are going really well, and maybe some things that you have to work on. So can I have a couple people really step up to the plate here to share? Who wants to unmute their mic and share?
I can do it if that's fine.
Hi, Susan.
How are you? I scored 16, and the 2 that were not 3s were acknowledging my weaknesses and offering and accepting apologies. And I'm not sure that I do those things all the time. I know that they're good to do and I want to do them, but I'm not sure that I know what all my weaknesses are. And if things have become heated, dealing with people on an emotional level is my worst thing. And so I may give a lame apology or a quick apology when maybe more is needed.
Great, thank you for sharing, Susan. How about somebody else?
I'll share.
Thank
Pam,
you.
it's Mary Kay.
Hi, Mary Kay.
Hi. So the 2 that I had choose on were compliment and praise my team and readily acknowledge weaknesses. So in my head, I'm complimenting them or praising them, but I have to consciously think about telling them. And so that's a little more difficult for me sometimes. And not difficult in terms of doing it, but difficult in terms of remembering to do it because I'm thinking it, but not saying it out loud. So I know that that's something I always have to think about when I'll see something and I'll think, wow, that was really great, but I don't say it out loud. So I have to start doing that more. And readily acknowledging my weaknesses. I'm also not sure what all my weaknesses are. So that's a little more difficult for me too. I sometimes can see it right away in certain things and not others. And a couple days later, I'll think, oh, I probably could have done that better. And then those things to me over the course of time seem to be certain things. And so that's something else I have to work more on.
Yeah. And I would say, Mary Kay, the first one you talked about was a praise. Is you think about it, but don't say it out loud. I think, a question for ourselves sometimes is asking ourselves why. Why do I not do that? And to be honest with you, with some of the high level leaders that I work with, this is one of the top 3 challenges that high level leaders have is they don't praise, encourage, and give positive reinforcement. And so I would say, ask yourself why. There's, and very successful people, and I'll say coaches, and even a Muffet McGraw that just retired yesterday. There's something in our DNA as coaches, very competitive. We want to be around high level people that are competitive, ambitious, driven, successful, competitive. And if people aren't to our level, we have a really tough time with that. We have a very difficult time with people that don't have the same expectations of us. And so when people do something well, that we're just like, well, you should be doing it. It's part of your job. It's part of your job. It's your job description. But we just have to remember that there's a reason why we are all successful. And sitting in the chair that we sit in, other people will run through a wall and bloody their knees for you with the praise and the positive reinforcement, because people need that. You'll get more out of them. And I'll say, lead like a coach. Leaders are coaches where we are, motivating, inspiring, and empowering people. And, the more that we can say and the more that we can encourage, the more we're going to get out of our people. And sometimes I had a tough time with that as well as a coach. Well, they should be working hard. They should be doing this. They should know, but you're going to get more out of your teams. So thank you for sharing. Coach Amy, are there any other comments in the chat box that people wanted to share, or some number totals?
No comments, but a lot of 16s and a few 17s. So a good range for most people.
Pam, I have a question.
Yes.
So I think one of the reasons that we hesitate to openly identify our faults or misgivings is fundamentally fear. When we're fearful that by acknowledging our own weaknesses, that we will be perceived differently, that we won't be respected, that perhaps, we all know that life and corporations are full of politics. And there are people that like us and there are people that don't like us. And to the extent that we make ourselves more vulnerable, we can, in fact, diminish our influence, we can diminish perception, etc. So I believe the answer to your question is fear.
Okay. And that is fair. That is human nature. And I would say vulnerability is power. And Camille, I was on doing a 360 last week and was on with a high level leader and was giving feedback to one of their individuals. And vulnerability was powerful from this C-suite level leader. And the feedback that was given to the individual was, there's senior level leader people can identify people that are not authentic, people that are not real, people that are know-it-alls, or it's powerful to say that, hey, as a leader, I don't know everything. And I would say that as a coach, I don't know everything. I surrounded myself with people that were way smarter than me, that were more talented than me in specific areas. And that is powerful, and people respect that, hey, I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. I've surrounded myself with an all-star team and people that actually make me look good. And
I agree. Fair enough. I totally agree with that. Totally agree. And I hope I've done the same thing.
Yeah, and that's what high-level leaders can identify, those individuals in a split second that are not vulnerable, that are doing, the corporate speaker or whatever that is, or acting like somebody that maybe we're not. And so we could get into a whole nother podcast on that. But the last thing I want to say about humility, you answered these questions based on what you think of yourself. There was a lot of 16s, 17s, and 18s. I would say take this again and think about what my team would say. What would my teammates, what would they grade me? What score would they give me? And so you guys can do that on your own, but perception matters, and perception is reality. And I'm glad that we think this about ourselves. And I would say take this again on what my team would give. What scores would my team give? So the second quality of being an ideal team player is being hungry. And you have to be hungry to be successful. You have to be ambitious to be successful. Ideal teammates. I want teammates around me that are as hungry, if not hungrier than me. And when you think about looking to go and play for a coach, or to work for a boss, or to be on a successful team that can win at the highest level, or that can perform or grow at the highest level, you better not be the highest performer on the team. In athletics, individuals wanted to go play for the best coach. They were hungry because they wanted to be successful. I want to surround myself with the best teammates because I'm hungry, and I want to be around people that are as hungry as I am, that want the same goals. We have a shared purpose. We have the same vision, that I can look to my left and my right, and I know that individual is as hungry and is working as hard as I am. And those are the successful people. Those are the hungry people. They're always looking for more. They're always looking to do more things to do, more to learn, more responsibility to take on. Give me more, put me in the game. That ambition. And these individuals never have to be pushed by a coach, never have to be pushed by a manager, never have to be pushed. So hungry, having those hungry teammates around you that they've already gotten it done before you've asked the question. Yep, I did that 3 days ago. Yep, I did that 10 days ago. These individuals also are harder on themselves. They're more self-motivated and diligent, where you as a leader are not, or a teammate is holding them accountable every single day. It gets exhausting. They're always constantly thinking about the next step, staying innovative, the new product, the new idea, the new recruit, how we can sustain, how we can continue to grow. And hunger also refers to, of a healthy kind. It's manageable, it's sustainable, it's committing to do a good job, it's dedication, it's loyalty to my teammates, which is truly required to be successful. These are the types of teammates that everybody wants to be around. Whatever it takes, diving on the floor, doing the extra, making extra phone calls on the weekends, working past 4 o'clock. I'm checking out at 4 o'clock because I don't want to work on my weekends. So what are we doing to stay hungry so we are a good teammate, and that we're also expecting other people to be good teammates as well? Okay. So you guys ready to take, anybody have any questions about that hunger? Is having, whether they're business partners, teammates, people, you're building a team. My players, I wanted to bring in hungry players. They didn't have to be the most talented, but I needed to
Can you
have
guys-
that team brand and a team ego where we were the toughest team in the Big Ten. We had an unbelievable mindset. Nobody wanted to play us. We were the hardest workers. We were always very well prepared, but we were always hungry. Okay. Here is the quiz to the next section for hunger, and this is about you. Okay. The first question around a hungry ideal teammate is, I do more than what is required in my own job responsibilities. I do more than what is required in my own job. 1 is rarely, 2 is sometimes, and 3 is usually. The second question, I have passion for the mission of the team, the purpose and the vision of the team. I have so much passion for the mission of the team. Okay, 1 is rarely, 2 is sometimes, 3 is usually. Third, I feel a sense of personal responsibility for the overall success of the team. I'm looking at a client right now that is part of a team that is not necessarily the leader, and they gave themselves a 1. I have a feeling, a sense of personal responsibility for the overall success of the team. The fourth question in this, I am willing to contribute to and think about work outside of office hours. 1 is rarely, 2 is sometimes, 3 is usually. The next question, I am willing to take on tedious or challenging tasks whenever necessary. The last question, I look for opportunities to contribute outside of my area of responsibility. So some of you that work in companies, this would be cross-functionally, getting involved in employee resource group, committees, task force, search committees, different things like that. You look for opportunities to contribute outside of your area of responsibility. Add your scores up. Add your scores up again and type into the box what your scores are. Get your calculators out and type in those scores. Those of you that are jumping off, you guys didn't want to show us your scores. So again, 18 or 17 is this quality is a strength of yours. It's a potential strength. 16 to 14, you might likely need some work in this area. And then a score of 13 or lower really needs improvement around this quality to be an ideal team player. Okay.
This is she.
So if we can, whoever's taking another call on the webinar, can you guys put yourselves on mute, please? Thank you. So type your scores in, and is there any questions around hunger? You know, some of you, again, I will ask the same question, this is what you think of yourself, but what would your team say about you as well to be a great teammate? Any questions or comments? Or let's have a couple people share your scores or some areas of strength or opportunities.
I don't really have any options.
Okay.
Okay, let's,
Can somebody mute themselves? Amy, can you see who's not muted?
Okay.
Mary Beth Berry.
Mary Beth, can you mute yourself?
Yep. I was on a Zoom call and
There, I just muted. I
Yep.
think I muted her.
You
Okay,
did.
great. So can we have a couple people share kind of your feelings on taking this, something you experienced, maybe an emotion or a sensation taking this, and some challenges or some wins?
Hey Pam, it's Andrea. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'll go because my score was a little low on this. So I'm not sure if I'm ranking myself as just how I feel in the moment, because I think I'm just so stressed with home and kids. But the idea of kind of doing more than what is required. I mean, right now I ranked myself pretty low on that. Just being sort of stretched thin. I think I have to take this when I'm in a different mindset. That's an area where right now I feel like I'm just kind of doing the bare minimum to hold everything together. Working outside of office hours again now, just everything is just this blend of work and home. So it's just a steady just collision of the both of them. So I think this was really eye-opening for me in that, when we get back to, or even just now, just to get a renewed sense of hunger and start looking for how I can push myself more, because this frankly surprised me. And so it makes me want to just step it up a bit and push myself, because I don't think it's reflective of where I always have been.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for sharing, Andrea. And, sometimes we have to give ourselves permission to take a step back and to take a breath. And, I have a lot of empathy and compassion around the parents that have small children at home, or they're trying to homeschool their kids. Some teachers and some school districts are very organized and they're keeping their kids busy, and other states or school districts don't have any curriculum at this point. So it's a lot on the parents. But also sometimes it's just communicating to our teammates, is there anything that I can do for you? And I think it's just some of the messages and some of the words that we use, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out myself, or I'm feeling so much anxiety myself. But sometimes it's just the words that we use with our teammates to show that I am hungry and I am being a great teammate. Is there anything that I can do for you? And I know that's not my responsibility over in this other area, but if there's anything that I can do to help you, I think it just shows the hunger. And you might not be able to do it in that moment, but you might be able to do it tomorrow or over the weekend when you can find a little block of time. But I think it just shows some empathy, some compassion. You're thinking about your teammates. You're not just thinking about like, what do I need to do? But it's just sometimes how we are communicating to our teammates as well. So how about one more person share? That was great, Andrea.
I have a question about that topic, about what Andrea was talking about. I'm just thinking about in my own work, maybe my own past, I've often found myself the first person at the office every day and the last one to leave, and and you're willing to do it for a while, but if you see that it's always only you, then I feel like there has to be a balance there, or and there has to be some self-care. If it goes on too long, you're not doing anybody any favors, really. Right. I feel like there has to be a little balance there.
Yeah, there actually has to be a lot of balance. And, I think when you're in a leadership position, it's, you're a role model, and it's the standards that you're setting, whether you're the first one in the office or the last one to leave, or you're working on the weekends, or, people work differently. And I'll just use myself as an example. Sometimes it takes me longer to do something than it might other people, because I'm not necessarily strong in a certain skill set. And it'll take me, I'll just use a PowerPoint for an example. It could take me hours to put together a PowerPoint, where it could take someone else 5 minutes to put together a PowerPoint. So I have to, so it takes me longer to do things. Pam's working harder. Well, it might not be I'm working harder, it just takes me longer to do certain things. But I think, I used to do this on my staff as well, that I would communicate to them. Some days I was in the office, many times I was in the office before, or I always was the last one to leave. But in the morning, I'll tell you, half of my staff beat me in the office because I worked out. I was working out. I needed some time. I needed some mind space. That's when I did my thinking, was in the morning. So I would stay home and get my workout in. I'd walk my dogs. I'd have my time. in the morning. So I necessarily wasn't the first one in the morning, but my whole staff knew what I was doing. I was taking care of myself so I could actually be at my best, be my best for them and be my best for my players. And I think if that's communicated, you know, that's a very healthy thing. And, you know, so there's what I would say on that part. So the third quality in being an ideal teammate is, I have to go the right way on my PowerPoint here, is PowerPoints is not one of my strengths, is being smart, and that's not necessarily your IQ, is being a smart, ideal teammate. And this just you know, I'd say this, having common sense. Common sense isn't common anymore. And people go like, just use your common sense, or I just assumed, you know, never assume anything anymore, and common sense isn't common anymore. And, you know, smart teammates and an ideal teammate, they tend to know what is happening within the team. They have a little intuition. They're great about reading the room. They're great about reading a group situation, or to how to deal with others in an effective way. We all are motivated differently. Everybody needs communicated to differently. Everybody needs to be handled a little bit differently. And those are the smart people and the smart teammates that are able to navigate those things differently. And if you can think of some of the people that you work with, being that smart teammate, we communicate and talk and work differently with people in the group. I'd say another thing is being that smart ideal is asking good questions, asking really good questions. Watching a little bit of the media. I don't watch a lot of the media, but I hear some of the dumbest questions that the media ask over and over and over again. But ask good questions, listen to what other people are saying, and stay engaged in the conversations. And this is especially important now, is being engaged, being present, you know, when everybody is working remotely. Virtual teams, you know, I saw a stat the other day is 84% of virtual teams fail. And if we look at our teams globally and how we are working together and how we are going to be working differently moving forward, that we need to have good coaching and run great virtual you know, team meetings. A lot of people are getting virtual team coaches to help bring their teams together. And I would say just, you know, smart people uses good judgment. They just don't think about what's good for me and what do I want to do, but what is going to impact my entire team. That's being smart. If I do this, if I make this decision, if I go here, if I go there, or if I don't do this, because I just don't want to, well, how is that going to impact my whole team? And that's an ideal team player, is putting other people first and me, you know, back. I always used to tell my players, and now I work with executive teams and tell this, is if I did this, how would this impact my company, my company's brand? How would this impact my team? How would this impact really, you know, our whole team? Is having people making sound decisions and having good intuition on those things. I could sit here and tell you stories on all of the bad decisions that, you know, my players would make. And that was a constant thing as a coach, and a constant thing that leaders should be doing, is educating their teams on why these are the expectations, and these are the why that every decision that we all make around this room is critical. And I used to tell my players all the time is, you have more to lose than they do. So when you think about it, is the mistakes that they would make, the failures that they would make off the court. Now, 99% of this is off the court, is they had more to lose than anybody else. And people were always watching for them to make a mistake and wanting them to make a mistake. People love to see people fail, unfortunately. And so we just really need to be smart and have those smart teammates that are around us. So here we're going to take our last quiz here before we wrap up. And I do want to point out, smart here is Muffet McGraw. Again, she was one of the smartest coaches, and she surrounded herself with the smartest, most intuitive players. This is Skylar Diggins, and she now is playing in the pros. But Muffet, she retired yesterday, and I would tell you she's one of the smartest people to retire in this climate. But she's had 33 years of very successful coaching at Notre Dame. She always surrounded herself with the smartest staff. She had everybody on her staff. She had 3 assistant coaches that were all associate head coaches. Every one of them was associate head coaches, and 2 out of the 3 had been head coaches at Division I programs before. So she always surrounded herself with people that were better, and she elevated them to that level. And they named one of her associate coaches the next head coach. But again, she surrounded herself with a player like Skylar Diggins that was an extremely smart player. These are smart leaders that surround themselves with people that are smarter than they do, or than they are. So here's the last quiz for SMART. My teammates would say, I generally understand what others are feeling during meetings and conversations. So 1 is rarely, 2 is sometimes, 3 is usually. I generally understand what others are feeling during meetings and conversations. The second question, I show empathy to others on the team. The third question, I demonstrate an interest in the lives of my teammates. The fourth question, I am an attentive listener. I'm an active listener. Next question, I am aware of how my words and actions impact others on the team. A lot of these questions I'm reading are around emotional intelligence. The last question around SMART is I adjust my behavior and style to fit the nature of a conversation or relationship. So this has been a big one in my conversations with my executive clients in my 360s is knowing your audience, knowing when you're around the senior level leadership, and knowing when you're around your team, your peers, and your senior level leaders. This is a different behavior when you're in these different rooms and meetings, is know your audience. So add up your scores and type your scores in the box on what you got. Again, 18 to 17 is this is a strength. If you're 16 to 17, this is a potential area that needs improvement. And if you have 13 or below, we need some practice. We need to really focus on and maybe ask ourselves some questions on why. So type those in there. And does anybody have any comments or aha moments, or some areas that they feel like they're doing really well, or some areas of improvement? So can we have a couple people share? Oh,
I will if nobody wants to. The
Is it
thing I
Andrea?
didn't realize until I took this is when I have to make a presentation or something, I over practice and over prepare because I'm an introvert and I get nervous about these things. And when I do that, I'm very much focused on what I am going to say. So at that type of meeting where I'm presenting, I'm probably not as good of a listener and not as aware of what other people are thinking in that type of a meeting. Where it's interactive, I do pretty well, but that particular type of thing, I'm all focused on what I'm going to say.
mm-hmm.
So that's not very good.
Well, no, that's great feedback. And I would say that's the next level. Like, you probably do a great job presenting, but then being able to read your audience as a professional speaker and someone that facilitates a lot is like, I have to be able to read my audience and read the room to be able to make adjustments or to engage, or, hey, I just lost everybody. And so are you going to continue going on with your monologue? Well, no, you've got to switch things up. You've got to pivot. You got to adapt to the people in the room or to your audience. So that's I would say that's just the next level skill, is build that awareness. So I'm going to call somebody out here. Africa, can I call you out and have you share? I would love to hear your voice this morning.
Good morning. How are you? So I found that in doing this, I did well in the other quizzes. However, when we got here, one of my weaknesses, it's being able to adjust my behavior. Just being able to read the room, the climate, especially around leadership. Being in HR, sometimes I think we carry a lot of information from peers, from other employees. And then when we enter a room with leadership, sometimes you want to express what's going on, because sometimes I feel that leadership is kind of oblivious as to what's happening at the other different levels. And being in HR, we know what's happening at every level. So I think that's just an area that I need to work on, not carrying that information or carrying everything in when I go in with leadership.
Yeah, I'm sure that takes a special skill set to be, even keel all the way across the board. And sometimes it's, you think of, I work with a lot of individuals in HR, and a lot of times they have their poker face on all the time. And like, you can never read somebody in HR because they got that poker face on all the time. They don't get too high, they don't get too low. And, but that's definitely a very special skill set for sure. So what were some of the scores, Coach Amy, in the chat box for this one?
There were a bunch of 16s, a couple of 15s in this category.
Great. And so then I would just say also with this, I can't emphasize it enough, we all think that this is what we think about ourselves, but again, what would your teammates say about you? So I would take that to another level and say, well, I think I do this. Sometimes our perception is better than what it maybe really is. Sometimes we perceive ourselves worse than what it really is as well. So answer these questions and say, well, I think my team would probably give me lower scores, or they would give me higher scores. This is the ultimate team player. If anybody is watching ESPN and The Last Dance, it started last weekend. It's on this weekend again. But the ultimate team player, and I know there's some people from Chicago on this call today, but this is when I think of the ultimate team player. I've coached many ultimate team players. That's the only way that you can win at a high level and win consistently year in, year out, week in to week out, is the ultimate team player. You see it right here that, Michael Jordan said that Scottie Pippen was the ultimate team player, the ideal team player, would not have experienced the success without him. And if we can surround ourselves with individuals like this and a team full of individuals where people accept their roles, people can play off of each other, people accept you for who you are and your weaknesses, and you can feed off of each other, this is when you experience greatness, and is being able to, have those three main qualities as an ideal teammate, where we're all, pushing in the same direction. We all have that shared purpose, that vision, that mission, that we're all in this for the same reason. It's hard to go and be part of a team or go be part of a culture, whether it's for a leader or a coach or teammates that have a different focus or a different vision or a different drive or different ambitions. It's very frustrating to be part of a team like that. We all want to be pushing in the same direction as well. So I'm just going to end here is, assess yourself according to these three qualities, being humble, hungry, and smart. Rank them in order of your strongest, your number two, and then your weakest. You can put it right there on your paper, is rank them in order, what's strongest, and then number two, and then your weakest one. And then I will leave you with this question. about hiring is how do you go about hiring the right team players? When you hire, when you recruit, how do you go about hiring that? We all think about talent, but making sure that we are recruiting and hiring the right people. And then what about employees who are already work on the team and lack one or more qualities? This is when you can get into trouble when you can have interpersonal destruction that goes on within the team. If you don't have smart players, you have a trail of interpersonal issues on your team. If you're lacking humility, you can have a devastating impact to a team when you have players or teammates that are lacking humility. You have an individual that is lacking hunger or ambition will frustrate other team members that are on the team that's not doing what's required. So these qualities are really, really important in talking about with your team and making everyone self-aware and aware of really what is expected. How am I showing up? How are we all showing up? And holding each other accountable is very important. So thank you for joining me today. Do we have any questions before I let everybody get on with your day? Any last minute questions or any comments, just put them in the chat box. We really appreciate your feedback. Feedback is a gift. Put those in the chat room. But if anybody has any comments, unmute yourself. I would love to hear from you. If not, everybody have a wonderful day. And Amy and I will be on for our podcast next week. I think I might have to change my day from Thursday to Wednesday. I have a keynote for a great company on Thursday during this time. So I will be getting ready for my keynote at this time. So we will get that out on our social media when I will be doing mine. Everybody have a great day, and we will see you next week.